Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, the men's season has come to an end in terms of international games. At least we've still got lots of rugby going on across the pond, and yeah, so ending the year on a victory, always good.
Always good, yeah.
Took a year since the last one, but at least it arrived eventually. But yeah, I mean, we've been having like victories, foreign and domestic. We've had victories in Spain. We've had victories down in Chile. We've had victories even in BC, where they've been having the Canadian Universities Men's Rugby Championship. So yeah, there's been a lot of rugby going on this weekend. Which bits stood out for you?
This was a bit of a tough weekend for me, unfortunately. I had to go out of town for a funeral, which is not always the best time. What that did drastically aid into my rugby viewing. Rugby viewing during the weekend. So unfortunately I did miss a lot of games live. So yes, I was excited about the victory. It took me 2 extra days to actually sit down and watch Canada's victory over Brazil. So that's a little bit different. Yeah, unfortunately didn't get just because of circumstances, didn't get that big of a chance to check out the university championship out in BC that much. It's just the way that it kind of worked out this weekend, unfortunately. I am looking forward to utilizing the Rugby Network and going back and watching those games. But when we talk about it later in the show, I may heavily lean on you for what happened in this tournament.
No problem there.
The one thing that I did catch, I think it's definitely worthy of a bit of a shout out though, is the Grey Cup. And the Montreal Alouettes won the Grey Cup. Big touchdown from Pillpot at with like 11 seconds left, Fajardo to a Philpott, and game-winning touchdown. Which was a super exciting game. And on the defensive side of the ball for the Montreal Alouettes, got to give a big congrats to Brock Gowanlock, who is a former Pacific Pride player that is playing defensive end for the Montreal Alouettes and is now a Grey Cup champion. So shout out to Pacific Pride, developing guys for the for the national team as they beat Brazil handedly and help the Montreal Alouettes absolutely stun everybody in the CFL during the playoffs, beating 2 of the best teams in history en route to a pretty surprising Grey Cup. You got the Alouettes colors on, I see right now. So
yes, that was deliberately intentional and not all by circumstance. But yeah, CFL has its roots in rugby as well. I believe the Argos' full name is the Toronto Argonauts Rugby Football Club. So
rowing club, actually. The Argos were a rowing club. There's a lot. They did a lot. They were originally a rowing club.
They're a rowing club, but this iteration was called their rugby club. And then obviously CFL rules came in. Then it just became known as the Toronto Argonauts even. And the CFL became a thing. MLSE bought them up. And we all know what happens from there. And yeah,
oldest professional sports team in North America, too.
Yeah.
150th anniversary this year. And they had an unreal season and then got absolutely destroyed by the Montreal Alouettes in the conference final. So kind of
what a difference a season.
Yeah, I know. Typical sad Toronto ending. Although the Argos don't usually do that. They've won like 6 championships in my lifetime. But for some reason, we all ignore that in Toronto when we talk about how bad Toronto sports teams have been. We just ignore the best team in the city for some reason.
It is a shame, but let's talk about other successes. Let's head over to Spain, where we can talk about the game against Brazil. And for those of you who are watching it, obviously didn't start the way we intended to. Brazil were able to get the first score of the game with a try from Oliveira, and that was then converted by Tranquez, who then a few minutes later, due to Canadian ill discipline, was able to score a penalty. So immediately, 2-score game right within the first quarter. And, everyone's already got their heads in their hands. They're like, what is going on? Why is it taking so long for these guys to get things together? How can they be giving away such easy penalties? But the tide did eventually change. Rumble getting his first of 3 tries just after 20-minute mark. Nelson getting 4 out of 5 conversions as well. And then Rumble followed it up with his second, just about 7 minutes before half time. Nelson converts again, going to the half 14-10 up. After the second half, we have a flurry of tries coming in the space of 15, 20 minutes, with Ororu getting his first international try at 15s just after the restart. Cole Keith getting his in the 47th minute, and then it was a bit of a wait until Andrew Coe was able to go over in the 59th. All these getting converted with the exception of Coe, just building that incredible gap. And then Brazil were able to get a score back with Wilson Rabolo going over from the driving maul, placing it down, until finally Rumble got the Hattie, got his 3rd try of the game in, I think, like 10 minutes to go. Nelson at this point, I believe, had come off, so Povey took over from kicking, and he was able to get that conversion as well. No other scoring opportunity came in the final 10 minutes. So the final score, Canada 40, Brazil 15. And, that's an impressive score. Well done to Canadian guys, especially coming off a loss against Spain, where a lot of errors were highlighted and exposed. Again, we mentioned last week about the ill discipline of getting 2 yellow cards, being down to 14 players for, 3/4 of the game. And so, however, seeing the game as it happened, this score could have been much higher for either Canada or Brazil. I will admit that. Like, Brazil were also incredibly sloppy as well. They gave away a lot of easy penalties, whether that was like knocking the ball on, just dropping the ball, just being in the wrong position at the wrong time. I think since the America's Rugby Championship has finished, Brazil have just been left in the wasteland of rugby opportunities in South America as well. I mean, obviously, Argentina, they're doing really well. As we've seen the past few years, Uruguay have come along. Chile have as well. Brazil, sadly, have, back in 2016, they beat the USA for the first time. And the gap between them at the time was greater than the gap between Japan and South Africa was when they got their famous victory in 2015. And it's, I know that the guys over at America's Rugby News have highlighted this number of times, that Brazil have just been left to flounder for themselves. And there's talk of high performance programs being issued in South America for different nations outside of Chile and Uruguay and Argentina. Brazil, to my knowledge, isn't on that list. Paraguay have been seen as an option before them, so their fall is really disappointing from a South American perspective. As for Canada, because this is a Canadian rugby podcast, I should get back to them.
Who cares about Brazil?
Well, that's it. You want good opposition to prove how good you are. I mean, again, they did beat Brazil by 25 points.
Solid win. Like, it's a no doubt pretty dominant win. Like, I mean, I said I had a weird experience with this game, just because of the circumstances of the weekend. But I didn't watch the game live, as you can probably tell based on my Twitter, whatever timeline. But so it was like, I did see the score. I saw like that Rumble had a hat trick. I saw like Oworu getting his, first pro try. Keith getting tries in 2 straight games, co-scoring. It's obviously nice as well. Saw the score line, but didn't really like look into how it played out, right? And
Yeah.
upon like, and so like initially, my initial thought seeing the scoreline, I'm like, I think it's great. Like, you're kind of talking about how Brazil, maybe as a union, has been struggling, for a variety of reasons over the past few years, and like as bad as like as much as we come on the show and complain about Rugby Canada and everything, like and like how poor the team's been performing, this is a game they should win,
Yeah.
right? And so they should win, and it's like when I saw the score line, I was like, oh good, like good, like get seeing, and especially seeing like things like Rumball having a hat trick, I'm like, oh good, like end the year huge win, crush a team that you should crush, right? You got a couple of the like a guy like Oworu, scoring his first try. You got a couple of the big guns in Rumball, Keith and Co scoring tries. I didn't really know what else happened in the game or how it played out or who else played well at the time, but like just based on like that surface level info, like initially I was pretty happy about it. And then I watched the game and then was kind of a little less happy about it.
Yeah.
Just in the sense that I think this is Canada, rightfully and fully deserving to win this game, beating up on a team that they're definitely better than, right? But it's interesting kind of watching this game and being like, I think some of the problems that we've been seeing with Canada are still like prevalent within the actual game itself. But it's just the fact that they are so much better than Brazil that they're able to like make up for that, right? And like all I'm kind of meaning like this is like the one thing was like I didn't realize looking at this score, but it's like that's another game they got off to a really bad start.
Yeah.
Just off to like just like as a surface level thing, right? Like the like you kind of look at, we talked about the game against Spain last week, right? And even though Canada actually scored first, right, by the time it hit the 20-minute mark, like what were they were down like what 14-3, 21-3,
Yeah.
after 20 minutes, right? And it's like this game was kind of like somewhat the same thing. Like over the first 20 minutes of this game they're down 10-0, right? And again, like you're down 10-0 against a team that you should really handedly be beating. Obviously, Rumball got the ball rolling in and the 22nd minute they got a big try, and that seemed to like spark the momentum and turn the game around a lot. Some areas of improvement that I definitely saw was like the line out. Mason Flesh coming into this game, I thought he was excellent, especially at the line out. Gave Quatrin some a pair of sure steady hands to target. And also like for Brazil's lineup was not good in this game, but I think a lot of that was because of Mason Flesh, right? And Flesh was able to steal a lot of the balls off of Brazil's lineout or make it otherwise untidy. And I think that was a big advantage for Canada because Canada's forwards were significantly better than Brazil in this game, right? There was obviously, we mentioned Rumball scoring 3 tries. Keith has a try. Oworu has a try. They were dominant at the breakdown. Guys constantly getting over the ball in defense, creating penalties, creating turnovers, right? They did a good job protecting their own ball as well. They're making tackles defensively. Every try, with the exception of Andrew Coase, was basically pick and go at the line until, eventually you can find that gap and break through, right? So the forwards I thought played really well in both the set piece and just like their open play, their phases running through that and their rucks. But it also is like, you mentioned, Stu, that you thought, I'm curious what you kind of think of this, but like you mentioned at the beginning here that you were like the score maybe could have been higher.
Yeah.
You mentioned for both sides, but I think like for Canada too, because it's like we talked about it last week. Like I want to see like the backs in attack get a little bit more involved in because we mentioned last week that it was like I don't know, I find like the attack is like kind of predictable in a lot of ways sometimes, right? And it's a lot of like, forward pod run, next forward pod goes, maybe you go to the centers for a crash ball, and then box kick away, right? If you're not finding anything, like, rinse repeat is kind of what Canada ends up doing. Um, there was Canada scored 6 tries in this game. 5 of them were forward pick and goes.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's right. And then probably their best phase of play was the try, right, where the backs took advantage of some turnover ball and able to counter attack. The ball went through everybody's hands at some point, right? The forwards are getting there in support. Higgins is playing quickly, and then you got a moment of some brilliant creativity from Lesage and to cap off the try. And watching that try, I'm like, I keep thinking, like, I think we have backs that really want to play with the ball in their hands.
Yeah.
But don't necessarily get the opportunity to do that. Right. And it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, like they scored 6 tries, only one of them was from the backs. And I mean, like, that's great for like the forwards and stuff, but I still want to see, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe Rob Howley, I guess, sounds like he's on his way out, so maybe we'll get
Oh, he is. That was
so,
actually in a press release, is that
yeah.
this was
So like
Howley's end of contract, and now he's returning to Wales. Whether to
to do
coach or not, it doesn't matter. He's just not with Canada anymore.
But I think like that's something that they need. Like I would like to see Canada's attack plan just involve the backs a little bit more. Be a little bit more confident running with ball in hand, and um just to not necessarily abandon the box kicks altogether, because we've talked about how that can be good if you do it effectively, but like just to kind of, because it's like that try was like, out of all the tests they've played this year, that might have been like their like the team's like best moment in like attack throughout the calendar year, maybe. Correct me if you can think of anything, throw out something else that you can think of.
Yeah, this year hasn't been really a year to pick successes from, so
so I mean,
yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, like that, like it looked good in the moment. I don't know, I would just like to see them get involved more, because I mean, I think you have guys like, you know, Povey, like, I mean, you got Higgins, Povey, like Lesage, Richardson, like Cole Mora, Lloyd. Like, these guys are like, they're playmaking guys. Like, they want, like, that's how they, like, you watch them in MLR, like they're the guys that you're like, their MLR teams are like, we need to give these guys the ball, right, and let them make plays. And I want to see Kingsley Jones give his backs the same, like, the same amount of opportunity with that. Very forward heavy game. And it's like, I don't know, like, it's something that I'm like, I think you can beat Brazil like this, but you can beat Brazil like this because Canada's better than Brazil. The best part of Brazil's game is their pack, right? It's their scrum. And if you can beat, because that's how like Brazil beat Canada a few years ago, right? And if your forwards can beat Brazil's forwards, you're going to win that game. And that's exactly what Canada did, right? And maybe this game kind of needed that from Canada. And I love that the forwards completely dominated this game. But I think for Canada to succeed against teams like the USA, Uruguay, Chile, right? As far as like qualification for a World Cup is concerned, probably going to have to utilize the backs a lot more and get a lot more creative with how they're implemented into the attack.
Yeah. Well, obviously we'll find out who Canada's new attack coach is going to be in about 6 months' time. And
who knows?
Then we'll see what attacking style comes into play, especially with the Pacific Nations Cup. I actually did a list of all the players that went out on the tour and who
Hmm.
played. So, uh, so the majority of the players did actually get to lace up their boots. I think it's only 3 players each game that played once. So, Sis Duru obviously got injured, so he wasn't in the second game. Moore and Olsen were dropped in favor of Kainoa Lloyd and Cooper Coates, with Tyler Rowland coming in to replace Sis Duru.
Hmm.
Of the overall list, the following players didn't play: Matthew Klimchuk, Piers van Dazelden, Zephyr Melnick on the forwards, and Jamin Hodgkins, Josh Thiel at the backs. And Austin Crichton was brought in to replace Dewal Cotsey, but he didn't play either. So,
Yeah.
with, and considering when it was the tour of Tonga, and it was a quick, like 5-day turnaround between games, and it was basically the same match day 23. I think this is a bit better. I mean, admittedly, I would probably have chosen Thiel over maybe Lloyd, but then
Yeah.
again, it's also a case of
I would have put in
make
Jamin Hodgkins too. Like
yeah.
I think that's the thing, right? Is I think um like it's weird because it's like I think we talked about how the game against Spain was like I think Kingsley Jones really needed to win that game. And I
Mhm.
think he picked a lineup that kind of resembles like at least out of the players that were available, maybe like the best lineup to actually put out there. As far as the players that were actually available or that were traveling, I'm not saying that that's the actual best Team Canada that you can put out there, but um
Yeah.
like I think you really needed to win this game. I think like right, and it's like so I can kind of understand maybe not playing a couple of those younger players, but I think like a game against Brazil to me
Mm.
is like that's the perfect opponent to get
Mm.
guys like their first caps. Reed Watkins obviously got his first cap in this game. Um,
Finally.
yeah, after sitting the entire game against Spain.
Yeah,
But
there was actually a quote from Ben Sage saying that, oh, after the Spain game, all numbers 1 to 23, we all looked in the mirror and knew what needed to be done. And I was thinking that, pretty sure number 21 was looking in the mirror going, you did nothing
hey,
because you were on the bench.
I mean,
Keep
everyone's on
doing
the team. Everybody's on
it.
the team, right? You got to sit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, what do you want Ben Lesage to say after that?
I get what he means.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously,
yeah,
it's like,
like,
okay,
well,
we need to focus on what we
yeah,
need to do. It's an overall unit. Yeah, I do get where he's coming from. Like I say,
I,
with Kainoa Lloyd, he's distinguished. He's been in the
yeah,
squad
he's
so
over
many
30.
so many times. Yeah, he's
Like,
if Canada makes it to the next World Cup, will he be playing? Will it be his final hurrah?
but that's the
And
thing, though. It's
yeah,
like,
and
I don't know, but that's what I mean. Like, there's a couple of guys that are in that, like, over 30, pushing 30 kind of age range. And I'm kind of like, I think like Spain is a really good team. Spain should have been in the World Cup. There's obviously World Rugby shenanigans with
yeah.
why they weren't, right? And like they're obviously a pretty high, much higher ranked team than Canada, right?
Mhm.
That's a good tough game. Brazil is ranked significantly lower than Canada, right? It's a team that Canada, despite the struggles that Canada has had, right? Canada should beat them, right?
Mhm.
And I think as evidence of this game, I think is a perfect way to illustrate that point where we like I don't think this Canada played their best game in this game, right?
No,
Like this is not their
absolutely
best
not.
game or whatever, but they smashed Brazil, right? They more than doubled. They won by 25 points. They more than
Yeah, they
doubled up
yeah they did the
Brazil.
job on
They
paper.
smashed. They crushed. And that's also with like a pretty poor first 20 minutes. Like
Mm.
they scored 40 points in 60 minutes. Like they crushed Brazil once they actually got going. Like after right, like after the 20-minute mark, this game is 40-5. Like
Mm.
it's right. Like they smashed Brazil in the last and that's what should happen. But I'm also like, that's why like Brazil is the perfect opponent if you want to get those new players and guys like Hodgkins, Klinchuk, Von Dadelson. Who else did you say missed out here? Zephyr Melnick, right?
Yeah.
Those are
Austin
like,
Creighton.
yeah, like those are the to me, I'm like, those are the perfect. This is the perfect type of game to get those guys in,
Yeah.
right? Right. Um, or like even if they don't start, like find kind of find a spot for them, right?
Mm.
Like just to just to kind of let guys get a feel for international test rugby,
Yeah, you gotta
right?
play them, gotta get them, gotta
Yeah,
get them ready at some point.
yeah, exactly. And I think, but I think ultimately, like, I think from like the Brazil, like from this Brazil game, like watching it, like even at that, um, like Lucas Rumball scored 3 tries.
Mhm.
He was also great at the breakdown, right? Made a lot of tackles, and ultimately, I'm like, that is a typical, maybe not the 3 try part, but it's a pretty typical like Lucas Rumball game. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe he doesn't score 3 tries a game, but like, he's capable of scoring tries. He finds his way over that line. Um, for the Arrows and for Canada in the past, right? So 3 tries is maybe a little exceptional, but he does score tries. Right. So pretty typical like rumball game, right? Some other guys too, like Keith was really good. I thought, Quatrin was good. Lesage always good, really good defensively, set up that try. Was really good. But I'm also like, all of these guys are guys that I know are really good. Like,
Yeah.
or at the very least, the best players that Canada has. And as much as I enjoy seeing them play really well against teams like Brazil, a team like Brazil, I think in the situation right now, I'm much more interested in watching like Isaac Kelly again, who I thought played pretty well. I mentioned Mason Flesh, who I thought was great, and he's been on the team for a couple of years, but it's still like relatively new, learning test rugby, and I thought he handled himself very well in this game. Makes me super excited to see him back with the Arrows and stuff next year, right?
Hmm.
Like I want to see him continue to develop. Matt Oworu, I thought was excellent again. He was definitely the best player against Spain, right? And it's like he's kind of proven to be he looks like he's been one of the better players over the course of the tournament, or the mini tournament, whatever this is, right? And it's like, for example, like I'm more excited about how Matt Oworu played than Rumball, just because I know
Yeah.
that's what Rumball can do. But I'm excited to see new guys and stuff come in, and I want to see all these guys that aren't necessarily getting time also get in, because I think right now, like if you're Rugby Canada, from a marketing point of view and stuff, like this is like the playbook of like any pro sports team that has been bad, right? Is
Mm.
you have to sell the hope, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what you have to start selling. And the hope is all the younger uncapped guys, right? Like that's where the hope lies. And I think like, I think I could stand to see, like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I could stand to see a couple more guys like getting in to these games, especially if you're playing teams like, say, Brazil, or who have they played in the past? Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, like
Yeah.
that. Like, I think those are the perfect games to like get these guys in. And then when you have to play somebody like whatever, like guys like, I don't know, Spain, Chile, teams in that realm, right? Then it's like, yeah, you can bring the vets and stuff back in and help out. But um I think right now it's more about, you gotta, like, Kingsley Jones, he is the coach, as much as we maybe don't like that. But you kind of got to figure out what your team's going to look like over the next 4 years, right? And who's going to be here. So you
Yeah.
might as well see what you got now, right? It's better to see what you have in some of these young guys now than to not, than to wait too long, right? I don't know. That's
Yeah. I get
my
that.
opinion on that. Not, I know I do like that he did mix it up a lot more than the Tonga series, though. in general. And
yeah, who knows? Maybe he's actually learning something along the way.
Hey man, like I mean, as much as like I said, like when we were ranting about the signing, like I mean, at the end of the like as bad like as much as like I don't think he should be the coach. As long as he's the coach, I'm still cheering for him. Like if you're the head coach of Rugby Canada, I want you to win. Like I want you to succeed. Like I'm not sitting here like I'm ranting and angry at things that he does, but I'm not like actively like I want you to fail. Like you coach my favorite rugby team. Like I want you to do well as long as you're here. Maybe I don't want you here, but as long as you are here, I do want you to do well.
Yeah,
bit of a sports fan paradox that one is.
Indeed. Well, whilst the men's 15s team ended the season with 1 victory and 3 losses, a Canadian rugby team that is doing incredibly well at the moment.
1 victory and 3 losses, so that co-try is definitely the best play. Now that you worded it, I'm like, yeah, no doubt about it. That co-try was the best play all year. Yeah. No doubt about that one.
Yeah, a team that is doing remarkably well is Canada's wheelchair rugby team. They are currently competing in the ParaPan Games in Santiago in Chile. And today marked the end of pool stages. There are 6 teams overall. Each team plays another find the rank. And that determines the semi-finals and then the medal matches. So, over the past few days, the following results in Canada have got a 63-30 win over Argentina, a 62-41 win over Brazil, a 60-27 win over Chile, a 61-45 win over Colombia, and a 48-41 win over USA. Get out the brooms. It's another clean sweep. They top the pool, and as a result, they will be facing Brazil in the semi-final. Now, unfortunately, we are recording this on Tuesday, and as such, by the time that this comes out, the medal match is likely to have already happened. However,
congrats, boys. Congrats on the gold medal. Well done. Well done.
Ladies and gents, you have done it on getting the medal because you've already beaten every team already. You just got to do it again. And
congrats on the
and by the time you're listening to it, you're like, yeah, we already did. What are you on about? Come on, get with the times. Look at the medal around my neck. So 2 days ago.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna manifest it on the podcast that they win the gold medal right now.
See that? Oh, I'm so glad I watched the gold medal match on CBC Gem and was able to see them, absolutely dominate USA or Colombia in that gold medal match.
I'll make sure I edit that perfectly for you. So
thank you.
Exactly. Or actually, we just put Colombia in because the USA will lose. Manifest that one too. USA. And then the USA can lose to Brazil. No medals for them. I'll manifest some sad USA sports failures.
All right. We're manifesting it. We're getting it done. All right. But yeah, congratulations to Wheelchair Rugby Canada on getting top of the pool, at least. And we're looking forward to seeing you show off your fancy ParaPan Am medals when this is all over. Right. We have gone from Spain to Chile. Let's bring it back to Toronto because the Arrows, they're still busy in the off season announcing re-signings. So earlier over the past week since we last recorded, they announced the re-signing of Kobe Faust and Shea Carey for the 2024 season. Faust, the second youngest player in MLR now after Brendan Black played for the Arrows last year. Shea Carey came in midway through the 2023 season, and his efforts have been rewarded with a full season for 2024. But we also now have the first signing for the Arrows that isn't as a result of a trade, and this is for Nick Brown. And the name Brown may seem familiar to a lot of you, and that is because he is the brother of Jordan Brown, who played last year for Rugby ATL and was traded to the Arrows We just want to confirm as well that there is no relation between those two and Cole Brown, who is the scrum half who played for the Arrows last year and will play for the Arrows this year. So there's going to be 3 Browns, but only 2 of them are brothers. Okay.
Listening to the commentary on these Arrows games next year is going to be awesome. Yeah, Brown
to Brown, back into Brown.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Browns being tossed around. Exciting signing though. Hopefully that means we'll get because Povey got his own separate official announcement that he signed. So I'm kind of hoping that Nick Brown signing means that his brother is also going to sign. I would think that works. But I don't know. Stu, why don't you give everybody a little rundown on who Nick Brown is and where he used to play and all of that.
So yeah, Nick Brown, background. Nick Brown, Australian, and
Arrow's second home, Australia.
Yeah, apparently. So he has previously played for Gordon Highlanders in the Sydney Rugby Premiership side. He's also played for the Southern Districts as well. They're based in South Sydney. And he's also represented Manly Rugby Club. And if you remember from an interview with Nick Benn at the very start of this year, he had also played for Manly as well. However, if you go onto his Instagram, you'll see that he's not like a lot of other rugby players. He's been posting, going to, red carpet events, posting stuff on TikTok and things like that. And that is because Nick is the winner, or I should say Nick and his partner are the co-winners of a reality TV show in Australia called FBoy Island.
Is that a real TV show?
That's
the name of the show. What do you do on FBoy Island?
I'm so glad you asked.
Are you a big FBoy Island fan? What do they call their fans? FBoy Islanders or FBoys? Like, what is?
Well, that's the thing. I've only become a fan since I found out that one of our rugby players is a competitor or successful competitor on the show. So the thing is, when I did my research for this, it's so there's a US version, and my extensive research on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Is there's the US version, and then there's the international releases and the adaptations, and because there's one for New Zealand and there's one for Australia as well. Now, unfortunately, the New Zealand and Australia one don't have a lot of information. They're just like, oh, there's this version and it was hosted on this broadcasting service. It's like,
okay,
great. However, I guess it's obviously a spin-off of the US one. So the premise is that the show centers on 3 female contestants and 24 male contestants. Of the men, 12 are self-processed nice guys, while the other 12 identify as F-boys.
Which one was Nick?
Nick was apparently a nice guy. So
there we go. The Arrows do say that they have the no dickheads all black-esque rule. So I think that does check out then. Okay, carry on. So that's good. Well, he was a nice guy, not F-boy.
Yeah.
Also, why is it F? Like, why not just say the word? Like
censorship. That's why. And also, you can then copyright the expression F-boy and then charge people. Anyway, so and the premise, the nice guys, they are interested in forming a relationship and splitting the prize money, whilst the F-boys are interested in only getting the cash prize. And so it says, during the progression of each episode, the women select men to go out with, all ranging between the ages of 22 and 35. The ending of the episode consisting of 3 men being chosen to be eliminated and afterwards revealing if they are a nice guy or not. While the nice guys that are eliminated are sent to a mansion called Nice Guy Grosso in a limousine, the F-boys, sometimes known also called Lotharios, are sent to Limbro. This place lacks luxury and consists of huts made from bamboo, cots. At some point in the first half series, the remaining male contestants reveal their own labels to the women and the audience. The show always used the abbreviation F-boy and never used the full term by contestants or the host.
Oh, I'm glad they actually explained that in the Wikipedia entry. That's great. So how do you I don't know. I know we should probably be talking about his rugby ability, but now I just don't care. So like, how do you win this game? You said he won. So like, how do you win?
So when it gets to the final episode of the season, I guess, from what I gather from the season 1 progress is that 6 guys make it to the end, because it said like 3 guys are cut after every thing.
Sure.
And so eventually they get down to 6. They're declared safe, and then from those 6, the girls choose their partner, or in fact, or like who they want to be, who they think is a nice guy, who's going to split the money with them, who's going to have a relationship with them.
Oh, they're splitting the money with the girl, not with the other like male contestant.
No. So the nice guys get a relation. The idea is the nice guys get a relationship.
If FBoy wins, he just steals the money from the girl.
Yes.
Well, this is an outrageous concept.
This is
Joe.
Yeah, this is it's an interesting premise. I understand why it got moved to the CW in 2023. I think it would go great on Netflix as one of their long list.
It probably will. Wow. Yeah. So he won this, and then split the money with his wife now.
I'd say partner is
okay. Fair.
Accurate.
And she's the one that made like the video of him talking about wanting to meet Drake in Toronto.
Yes. So
all right.
Yeah. So
I like this. We need the marketing. Really. I like this.
Yeah. So Molly O'Halloran is his partner, and there's actually an article from June of this year saying which FBoy Ireland Australia couples are still together. So, and it says Molly O'Halloran and Nick Brown. We've seen Molly O'Halloran and nice guy Nick Brown's chemistry sizzling from the start. The fact that O'Halloran asked Brown to come back on the show after prematurely booting him off so early says a lot about their bond. So it's no surprise that the pair are still very much together, enjoying the new stage of their romance that they can finally take public. O'Halloran is based in Melbourne, while Brown is in Sydney.
Not anymore. He's in Toronto now.
Well, both of them will be in Toronto.
That's perfect. All right. Yeah, give them a camera and film everything that they do. Like genuinely, if they have any like level of fame anywhere in the world, use that. Oh yeah, market the hell.
I'll put it this way: Nick Brown on his Instagram has 14.2 thousand followers at the moment. And if I do,
is that more than any MLR team?
I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, yeah, doing absolute. Obviously, those numbers are doing, but I'm saying get Molly here. Like the team hire Molly and have her be like social media manager or like TikTok consultant and stuff like that. And just help.
The Arrows have 28,000 followers on Instagram, so it's half of the Arrows.
Yeah, but obviously the stuff coming in, getting these players in, getting this attention. Obviously, this show, I don't know if I know it's only been popular in the United States and Australia and stuff like that, but yeah, I just got on Molly O'Halloran's Instagram, which says she's occupational therapist. FBoy Ireland, Australia, and then after that, it has the Toronto Arrows in the handle as well. So I think maybe she has been picked up by the Arrows as well.
Arrows,
yeah.
That's kind of cool. We get package deals. Get the full couples to join the team. Can have you play rugby, and then your partner can do social media. It's a
So Nick actually put this. But when it was announced that he had signed, He posted on his Instagram, so excited to finally announce that Molly and myself will be joining the Toronto Arrows family next year. So happy to share this news with you all and get ready for all our travel content coming in January. I think
Yeah,
that
that's
basically
cool.
means, follow them on Instagram. What I've seen on their stories, they're on TikTok as well. Just
You know
get
what?
following them, get finding them.
Okay, so yes, I think that's really cool. There was, I think a couple of weeks ago, they like the MLR put out that ad that said there's like no stars in rugby as part of it. And I think they meant it as really cool. And I took to Twitter to be like, that's not really a thing you should brag about. But then someone corrected me in saying like that I took that quote out of context because after that there was the seeking personal glory part. And I still think that perhaps you need some guys that want to seek some personal glory. Like you want guys that want to be, stars, that want to be, have a certain level of celebrity and stuff. As one of our listeners too, Mark Button, like during that thread that we were talking about that on Twitter, right, directed me to a recent episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Rugby, where they were breaking down who they thought were like the top stars in rugby. And there's an alarming number of players that they dismissed from their list on the basis that they just don't think the guy wants to do that. Right. No matter how good that player actually is, and they were talking about some of the best players in the world. But it seems like there's a lot of rugby players that don't want that level of fame and stuff. And so which is not good for marketing the game. So I mean, if the Arrows are going to sign a guy that like has been on reality TV shows, he is willing to make video content. He's already made like a video with his wife, like interviewing him, which is actually pretty funny.
I just want to clarify. I don't think they're married.
Oh,
I think,
okay. Sorry. Okay.
Remember when I said in like, oh, they still together? Like they were still in a long distance relationship.
Yes. Okay. So it's like somebody, like you got the player, like making a video with his partner, being like, and it's actually pretty funny, right? And it's like if you have a player that's actually like kind of willing to do this, like that could, like that, I feel like that could go a long way because there is like a lot of room for like a bit of star power in the MLR and in rugby as a whole. Like, I mean, we probably got as much as we could out of a guy like Ben Foden, right? For like the league and like some worldwide exposure and stuff. But, it doesn't really, I feel like MLR hasn't really had like a guy that like step up and necessarily show off a lot of personality necessarily. Like you get a couple guys here and there, a couple guys maybe have done some good podcast hits and interviews and stuff. But I feel like, like, I don't know. I feel like you kind of need a guy that wants to be on camera. And it looks like Nick Brown is a guy that wants to be on camera, wants to do all that extra stuff that you need to do. At some point, we should talk about that he's a good rugby player. And
he's a good rugby player as well. So according to Brian Ray, who left this comment on Reddit, is that Nick Brown came to the UK, I believe, to do his masters at Leeds Beckett, or his undergrad.
Wadden.
Yeah, so Wadden has been the guy who's like bridged the gap, so to speak, with getting both the Browns over.
Good for him.
So I think
that's good. Like that's what you want. Like, I mean, obviously, like that's, I think, part of the benefit of having players play overseas a little bit too, is you get to expand the network of your franchise, right? And those players that play on other teams play with other guys, and like they can do a little bit of scouting for you while they're playing in other leagues, right? And be like, hey, I played with, if Wadden's like, hey, I played with these two guys at Leeds Beckett, I think they could really help us. Like, I think that's great, and I'm glad the Arrows are doing that, and like you're already how you have a guy like Wadden, who probably knows the culture and knows that they'll fit it. I mean, knows the culture with the arrows, and I would assume knows that he thinks the Browns will fit in. So I think it's great to see that the arrows player is kind of actively recruiting guys for the squad.
Yeah, so let's look at the Arrows squad as a whole. To date, the Arrows have in their forwards McRogers, Roland, Larson, Grindle, Flesh, O'Neill, Wong, Rumble, Faleva, Kerry, and Nick Brown. In the backs, they have Cole Brown, Malcolm, Richardson, Breen, Bowman, Bowen, Grant, Reed, Nelson, Povey, Ben, and Faust. And we're still waiting for the signings of Biddle, Jordan Brown, and White Takia from those trades. But yeah, teams starting to come together now. I think it's still too early to give a list of who's going to be the starting 15 in that first MLR game. Maybe when we get around to preseason in January, we'll be able to give a list.
We'll do it. We'll do the full season preview and predict some lineups and stuff.
We all know how it is.
2024. This year's winding down.
Okay, speaking of preseason in the league itself, there was league news with a competition update. So the previous information that we picked up before has now been confirmed in the terms of there are going to be 3 divisions: West, Central, and East. 4 teams in the West, 4 teams in Central, 5 teams in the East. The playing structure is that for the Eastern teams, they will play home and away for their 4 other teams, and they will play 2 of the Central home and 2 away, 2 of the West home and 2 away. For the West and Central, it is pretty similar. They'll be in their internal conferences. They'll be doing home and away. For the East, it'll be home and away. And then for either the West or Central, it'll be home and away. And 1 extra game will be played between the Western teams and the Central teams. And that ensures that there are 16 games for every team in the season. It's very complicated. It'll probably be explained better once the schedule comes out. But for now,
it's really not that complicated.
You'd be amazed how math goes over people's heads. And speaking of math, we are now going to be having seeded playoffs.
Love it.
So we are moving past the eliminator stage and then into conference finals and then into the final. We are going into quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the final itself. And the way it works at the moment is that the tops of the divisions will be seeded 1, 2, 3. And then the next 5 teams across the league will be seeded 4 to 8. So this means theoretically that you could have teams from an entire division make it to the playoffs.
They should have had an entire division make the playoffs last year. The East kind of sucked. I think
that may be the reason why they've gone for this option.
Yeah, I'm all for an entire division making the playoffs if a division is currently. Yeah. I don't know. It works.
Yeah, I guess it's like a meritocracy of oh, you're clearly better than all these other teams, but they finished second in their conference and you finished third. So
yeah, if you're mad about this, play better.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, again, whilst no dates have come out as yet, it was posted, I think, by Nola Gold in a response to someone saying that the season was beginning in March as well. Again, we also don't have any confirmation on a break in play for internationals. But, we're just making do with what we have. And, once we find out that news, we'll relay it to you either on social media or on the podcast itself.
What's your reaction to the playoff format?
I think it's, more games is always great.
More games. It also means more money, too.
Exactly. So, it gives teams like it rewards teams that top each of their division with another home game, which I think is huge. Great. And then I also, because people were speculating why have they gone for this, and I think someone pointed out that it makes teams forced to keep playing right to the end of the season. In that you may be, for let's say, so this format, let's say this format was in last year, New England, top of the East, clearing the way. They're doing, no one can touch them. San Diego in the West, they're top, no one can touch them. And then you have a mismatch in between. And then unfortunately the Arrows, Chicago and Dallas at the bottom. But if you have this format of, you don't, like, okay, maybe you're not going to be first, but if you can beat this team in the other division, then you get a playoff spot. You may have like a tough game, or you may have a tough game against, play teams from another conference. But if you can win these games, then you make it to the playoffs. And I think it's to keep the competition going.
Yeah, I think
does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that does make sense. And actually, it wasn't something that I thought of until you mentioned it, but like the fact that so you're gonna obviously have the division winners, which you definitely need if you're gonna have 3 divisions, because you need the divisions to mean something. So the 3 division winners being seeded 1, 2, 3 makes perfect sense to me. But that is an interesting point that I think you bring up. It's not so much like that there's going to be 2 extra teams that make the playoff. So like, teams aren't necessarily going to be eliminated as quickly, but it's also like the idea that it's like it's going to make the cross division games, especially the cross division games late in the season, that much more important, because everybody, so you're going to have 3 division winners. So those are locked up, but then everybody else is going to be fighting for, so the other 10 teams are fighting for 5 playoff spots that they can all get. So that's going to make, like, because even like last year, we've been talking about some of the really tight playoff races and being like, oh, like, well, this team's got to play a team in the West. So that means like, well, at least if they lose that, they're not giving up points in the East or whatever. Right. Like, or, that's kind of how that crossover works, and it does that in a lot of other sports as well. But this one is now going to be like, you're not going to be able to afford to lose to teams in other divisions, right? Because you have to beat the teams in the other divisions to make the playoffs. So I think that's a really interesting format. I love the playoff format for a lot of reasons. I think one, that thing that you just mentioned is kind of cool. As I said, I never thought of that before, but that is cool. But two, I hate buys in the playoffs. I just don't like it. It's part of the fun of the playoffs, especially to me, single elimination form playoffs, is that anything can happen. And I just generally don't like buys. You can lose a game, anything can happen. I also don't like buys. I think like if at Major League Baseball, a couple teams got buys this year and they all sucked or whatever, like the rest did not help them. So I think like not having a buy in that sense is also good, but also because, as you said before, right, there's the constant updates. Looks like the season's going to start in March. America's Rugby News was saying that there's going to be a break that's 2 weeks or so during the playoffs. So, I mean, if you're like, I don't want any teams having a bye. Like, if you imagine winning a conference and then having to go like a month before you actually play your playoff game because there's the break for the international window, that would absolutely suck. So for that reason, I'm really happy that there's no buys as well. And the other reason that I really like this is because I think the MLR looks like has an eye to like the future. The way that this is set up with the divisions and stuff, right, and this playoff format means you don't really have to change it at all as the league continues to expand. Like, if you can expand up to 15 teams now, right, you slot one team into the Central, one team into the West, right, the whole playoff format still works. The other 2 divisions just go to the same schedule as the East Division, right? It's done. It's like you can seamlessly add 2 more teams to the league now. With the way that this is worked out, right? So if you can seamlessly do that, you don't have to worry about anything. You keep 8 teams in the playoffs, which I think is the perfect number. I think the perfect number of teams in the playoffs right now is 8. 4 feels a little too little. 6, I think, is weird. Like I said, personal opinion, but I don't like buys. in the playoffs. And so I mean, like, I think you go to 8, and I mean, realistically, like, I know I saw a couple comments from various people on Twitter, Reddit, whatever, being like they think 8 is a lot of teams. I think that's also a thing that you look at as like, yeah, but it's like that's for the league to also expand. You can keep it at 8, right? Like, if the league, all the league has to do is get to 6. If the league's at 16 teams, right? 8 is the same percent. If the league gets to 15 teams, right? Which it's built to, which this structure, if the league gets to 15 teams, which this structure is built to do, right? It is built to add 2 more teams. 8 out of 15 is the same percentage as the NBA and the NHL. Like, it's built to go up to that. As far as teams making the playoffs, 8 out of 15 versus 16 out of 30 in the NBA. And I guess the NHL now is 16 out of 32. So the NHL is a little bit lower, but it's like, it's built to basically be that on par with the NBA and what the NHL was up until like 2017-18 anyways, right? So it's like, it's not that far off of a lot of other leagues as far as the amount of teams that make the playoffs. It's built for 2 more. The structure to me is built for 2 more teams to expand, which I kind of love the MLR for doing that. Seems like it's a big eye to the future, and I think it'll be a lot more entertaining to watch next year.
Yeah, I mean, we're already talking about the championship series, and I'm already excited to be able to watch it, hopefully with the arrows in it. But still waiting on the details of how the entire season will unfold, when it will be held, if and when there's going to be a bye week. But I'm sure that all that information is soon to come. But we just got to twiddle our thumbs and wait it out. Do also want to mention that there has been a trade featuring a Canadian player in the MLR this past week, and the trade has been between San Diego and Chicago. So San Diego received the playing rights to Hugh Roach, and in return, Chicago received the playing rights to Jason Higgins. So the scrum half, started Toronto, went to San Diego, 2 years there, and now going to be with the Hounds in Chicago. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Jason does in the Windy City, but wishing him all the best. And we're going to close out this podcast with the results from the Canadian University Men's Rugby Championship. We mentioned it briefly at the end of last week's podcast. So these games are between 8 men's university teams, each, because it's 3 games over 5 days. Halves were reduced to 30 minutes, so 60 minutes total, and there were up to 11 substitutions. And I think as well is that in the rules for this, the front row had to be replaced for each game. So, interesting rules, but it gets a lot of guys out there, gives experience against teams maybe they wouldn't have otherwise gotten the opportunity to get to, and just gives UBC and UVic a chance to have a couple of warm-up games before they meet in the championship final. But anyway, so the opening games took place on November 15th. With Memorial beating Ottawa 33-21. Then we had Queens versus UVic. UVic won that game 40-19. Then we had hosts Trinity Western against Guelph. Now, this was the game of that round because it was, I think, 10-7 at the 79th minute. And at the 80th minute, it was 10-12 to Guelph. So Kobe Faust getting that try. Kobe Faust's current arrow unable to be stopped by Giuseppe Toit in Trinity Western colours, former arrow himself. So interesting to see that connection. But that was an absolute cracker. And finally, the Calgary Dinos scoring 3, whilst UBC scored 41. Then we move on to the semi-finals, including like the championship semi-finals and the consolation semi-finals. Queens beat Ottawa 14-13. Another game in which the scoreline was incredibly close. Calgary 12, Trinity Western 51. Memorial put up a pretty good fight against UVic, but fell as they scored 47. And Guelph scored 10, whilst UBC won the game with 30. So we go into the finals, and we start off with the 7th place final. Ottawa won that game 47-0 against Calgary. So disappointing for Calgary to be nilled in that game. Then we had Queens versus TWU. Again, an incredibly close game. Final score, Trinity Western 27, Queens 24. So another game in the rounds in which team only wins by fewer than 3 points. Then we had the bronze final, which was Memorial versus Guelph. Memorial 12, Guelph 38, so they get the bronze medal. And I mentioned the 7th place final is that one team got nilled. I was very close to having 2 games in the finals with a team getting nilled, because I don't know what happened to UVic, but UBC just took complete control of the championship final. UVic were able to get on the scoreline to restore some honor, but this was completely one-sided. And we predicted this last week. It's like, as we said, it's UBC's to lose until they're eliminated. Final score in the championship final, UVic 7, UBC 41. So congratulations to the Thunderbirds. They have done the three-peat, and obviously remain the benchmark for all other men's university rugby teams to be to reach and to improve upon. But love seeing Canadians play, love seeing the growth of rugby in Canada, and obviously fantastic to have on the Rugby Network, where it was free to watch and free to get all these games. And if you want to watch any of those replays, those are on the Rugby Network. Now we're bringing the episode to a close, but next week we have a very special episode. We have 2 people coming on. You may have seen some press releases and on Reddit and on social media about the Vancouver Highlanders. We've got both guys involved here. We have the 2 co-founders. We have Curry Hitchborn and Ralph McRae coming on the podcast. They will be talking about the Vancouver Highlanders, the Rugby Players Challenge, their 10 commitments, and any questions we have about their rugby experiences in Canada. We've had Curry Hitchborn on before, but it'll be great to have Ralph as well. And we'll be asking that. And if you have any questions that you maybe want to ask them, some information that you want to find out about the Highlanders, let us know. We'll see what we can do. And I think it's going to be a great episode, and seeing how, one thing that we've been told though, don't call it professional. It's not professional. It's just a new team in Vancouver. And so if you're looking to watch any rugby this coming week, the Premiership and the URC is on Sportsnet. Unfortunately, no more men's games or anything else coming up. But in Europe, it's still going on. The Premiership and URC, as I said, on Sportsnet. And as was announced last week, the Premiership Women's Rugby will be available to Canadians on the Rugby Network. Now, in England, it is currently only 1 game per round is being broadcast, and it appears as though that will be continuing for the United States and Canada. Obviously, when we get to the knockout stages, those games will be shown live. But those games, once a week, should be available on the Rugby Network. And as we said, same thing for the Canadian University Men's Rugby Championship. It is currently free for you to watch the Premiership Women's Rugby. So, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces, on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcasts on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast, as well as extra interviews with players and coaches. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, all at The Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the people find you on social media?
I'll be at Reset the Jet across all social media networks and on my couch binge watching FBoy Island now.
And you can find me across social media at Hardmansville, H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.